The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, long celebrated as a bastion of stability, democracy, and shared governance, now finds itself at a profound crossroads. The age-old question of what binds England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland into a single nation has resurfaced with renewed intensity. In this episode, we explore the forces pulling the United Kingdom apart, the arguments for and against continued union, and the historical, economic, cultural, and philosophical dimensions that shape this existential debate. Let us begin by examining the question that has dominated recent British discourse. Should Scotland become an independent country? This is not a new question. In 2014, Scots voted in a historic referendum to remain within the United Kingdom. The result was decisive, but not overwhelming. 55% to remain, 45% to leave. At the time, the No campaign argued that staying in the UK guaranteed economic stability, EU membership, and shared British identity. Yet, within just 2 years, one of those pillars collapsed. The Brexit vote of 2016, in which a majority of the UK voted to leave the European Union, starkly contrasted with Scotland's clear vote to remain. This democratic divergence reignited the independence movement with a new argument: Scotland is being taken out of the EU against its will. From the Scottish nationalist perspective, this is not merely a matter of economics or policy, but of democratic legitimacy. If Scotland is a nation, then it should have the right to determine its own path, especially when it is being governed by a Westminster system it did not vote for. The Conservative Party, currently in power in London, holds little sway in Scotland, where progressive and pro-EU sentiments dominate. This leads many to argue that Scotland is effectively governed by another country. On the other side, Unionists maintain that the United Kingdom is stronger together. They argue that independence would plunge Scotland into economic uncertainty, sever centuries-old ties, and introduce new borders and bureaucracies. Some claim that the economic arithmetic simply does not add up, that an independent Scotland would face significant fiscal deficits, currency uncertainty, and capital flight. They ask, what will be the currency? Will Scotland rejoin the EU and thereby erect a hard border with England, its largest trading partner? Meanwhile, within England, a quiet form of nationalism has emerged. No longer content to define itself as the dominant partner in a British Union, a growing segment of the English electorate increasingly embraces the idea of an English identity separate from Britishness. Brexit itself can be viewed in part as an expression of this identity, a belief in sovereignty, self-determination, and disentanglement from larger political unions, including, potentially, the UK itself. At the same time, Wales has begun to flirt with ideas of greater autonomy, if not outright independence. Although historically more integrated into the structures of British governance, there is now rising discontent over the centralisation of power in Westminster, particularly after the pandemic exposed what many saw as failures of UK-wide governance. In Northern Ireland, the conversation takes on an even more delicate tone. The Good Friday Agreement of 1998 brought peace to a region torn apart by decades of conflict, in part by creating a delicate balance between British and Irish identity. Brexit has disrupted that balance. The introduction of the Northern Ireland Protocol, which effectively places a customs border in the Irish Sea, has reignited fears and political instability. Sinn Féin, the Republican Party advocating for Irish unification, is now the largest party in Northern Ireland's assembly. The question of a border poll looms large. So what are the core issues that bind or divide the United Kingdom today? Let us categorize them. Historical legacies. The UK is not a single national story, but a composite of different histories. Scotland was never conquered by England. It joined the Union through treaty in 1707. Wales was annexed. Ireland was colonised. These differences matter. They colour national memory, cultural identity, and the very meaning of sovereignty. Economic disparities. London and the South East dominate British economic life, while other regions suffer from long-term industrial decline, austerity, and underinvestment. Many argue that the economic union has failed to deliver prosperity equitably. Democratic representation. The first past. The post-electoral system often produces majority governments that lack support in Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland. This fuels a sense of democratic alienation, especially in Scotland, where every general election seems to result in a Conservative government despite overwhelming Scottish support for progressive parties. Cultural divergence. The constituent nations of the UK increasingly diverge in terms of values, political culture, and global outlook. England leans more conservative and nationalist. Scotland more social democratic and internationalist. Can such divergent worldviews coexist under one constitutional roof? Legal and constitutional ambiguity. The UK famously lacks a codified constitution. This means questions of sovereignty, national rights, and secession are managed through political precedent and ad hoc negotiation, not legal clarity. This breeds instability. Now, let us examine alternative viewpoints. British Unionists argue that the Union is a force for stability and global influence. They see secession movements as emotional and potentially ruinous. They also warn that breaking up the UK could weaken all its parts geopolitically. Scottish nationalists and increasingly Welsh and Irish voices argue that the UK has failed to deliver on its promises of equality, prosperity, and representation. For them, independence is not separatism, but the reclaiming of self-governance in a 21st century world. English nationalists feel left out of the conversation altogether. They resent the devolution settlements that give Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland distinct powers, while England remains governed by Westminster without an English Parliament. They see the Union as disproportionately shaped by Scottish and Northern Irish interests. Constitutional reformers propose a federal UK with clear distribution of powers and protections for minority nations. But such a project requires political will, deep structural change, and a shared vision, none of which are currently in evidence. Bonus section. Beyond the Union, rethinking the nature of sovereignty, identity, and democracy. To take this conversation further, we must question the very categories we are working with. What is a nation? Is it a legal entity, a cultural community, or a political project? Who gets to decide if a nation deserves a state? The idea that sovereignty must reside in a single central authority is being challenged across the globe. From Catalonia to Quebec, from the EU to devolved parliaments, we are witnessing an age of layered sovereignty. Could the UK become a post-sovereign union, one based not on coercive legal authority, but on mutual agreement, voluntary association, and subsidiarity? What if the Union were reimagined as a confederation, where each nation exercises full domestic autonomy, but collaborates on defense, trade, and foreign policy? This opens profound philosophical questions. Is democracy best served by larger unified states or smaller self-governing communities? Is economic efficiency more important than cultural preservation? Can identity and plurality coexist without demanding uniformity? And finally, the moral question, should a nation be kept within a union against the will of its people? Is unity more virtuous than freedom? Or does real unity require consent and renewal? The future of the United Kingdom may depend not on whether it stays together or breaks apart, but on how it chooses to engage with these deeper questions. Will it cling to outdated structures, or will it dare to imagine a new political architecture that honors diversity, respects autonomy, and upholds shared values? Watch our previous episode on the philosophy of money and the moral architecture of debt, and subscribe for upcoming deep dives into the economic, political, and philosophical future of our societies.